I won't be flying tomorrow. What did I even say? Hello, welcome back to AeroSafe, the General Aviation Weather Channel. Today is Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, February 11th, and it is 2037 Zulu time. We'll start by looking at the surface analysis. We're going to look at pressure systems and frontal systems to get an idea of what's going on in the atmosphere. Then we're going to look at the weather that applies to us as pilots, things that might be hazardous that would keep us on the ground. Remember to stay tuned till the end to get some free AeroSafe swag. Big story today is this low pressure system over Texas and the cold front that stretches along the low pressure. There is a lot of really bad stuff going on here right now, some convective activity, thunderstorm watches, and tornado watches. And in fact, we're going to skip ahead. Normally, we kind of wait to look at these things, but if we look at the severe weather outlook for today into tomorrow, we see the severe thunderstorm risk across the southeast stretches from general up to enhanced chance of thunderstorm. Lots of convective activity going on there, lots of lifting action, lots of nasty weather as this warm air over the Gulf is forced up by the cold front coming in, which creates a lifting action that we know that's necessary for thunderstorms. If we look also at the interactive map on flight service and we pull up the severe weather watches and warnings, the yellow box here is a thunderstorm watch. So that goes from northeast Louisiana up towards northern kind of central Louisiana. So thunderstorm watch. Below that, to the south of that, from East Texas up to the border of Louisiana and Alabama, there are tornado watches. So obviously there is a lot of movement in the atmosphere right now. That's producing really terrible weather on the surface. Obviously, that's a matter of safety for the general public. And as pilots, if there's that much intense weather on the ground, it is certainly something that we don't want to fly into. Most of the airplanes operating in this area right now are going to be transport category aircraft. So airplanes operated by airlines. They are capable of flight end-to-nose icing with structural anti- and de-icing equipment, much faster than us in our light piston aircraft, and they have the ability largely to get over the weather. Even with that, you see there are some areas that are being actively avoided by airplanes. They're using their onboard weather radar, which is the only thing that gives you absolute up-to-date information to find holes in the weather and get around it. He's at 6,000 feet. That's a bumpy ride for his passengers. So you can see for the most part, airplanes are largely avoiding this area. Those that are flying in this area, they're kind of following the same route in the holes through the weather that they are finding with their onboard weather radar. Those of us without anti or de-icing equipment don't want to fly into this. And further, we don't have weather radar to find the holes to safely fly through this system. So this whole area, absolutely stay far away from it. Back to our surface analysis chart here. Up in the northeast, there's not a lot going on except for that stationary front that's over the eastern part of Canada. There is a warm front coming down from central Canada over the Dakotas into Nebraska. High pressure systems exist largely through the west and midwest, some troughs here and there. And then the other story that's developing is this low pressure and occluded front up over the far northwest by Washington and Canada. Thunderstorms and clouds are largely created by lifting action. We know that low pressure systems and cold fronts are triggers for the lifting action. And so we see precipitation and clouds around those areas. High pressure systems are typically much more stable air and they're not going to produce clouds. So those areas are going to be clear. We will now move on to the interactive map and we'll look at flight category for airports across the country. The areas with ceilings coincide with those weather systems that produce lifting action, like the low pressures and the cold fronts. Down here in the southeast, there's large swaths of marginal VFR, IFR, and low IFR. The Great Lakes area is pretty similar. There is a lot of marginal VFR weather going on. And the Northwest, same story. We're starting to see the development of ceilings in the Northwest. Some are VFR. They're high enough that the categorical report is VFR, but there are some that are marginal VFR, IFR, and even a couple that are low IFR. So generally speaking, areas of IFR are the southwest as a result of that low pressure and the cold front sweeping from Texas all the way to the Carolinas. The Great Lakes area would be IFR as well, and the Northwest. Let's take a look now at the hazards that exist within those areas. We'll start with the freezing levels and the AeroMet Zulus. In a light piston aircraft with no anti-icing or de-icing capability, if you know you're going to be in the clouds and the temperature is going to be at or below freezing at your cruise, that's immediately a no-go situation. Visible moisture plus freezing level equals icing conditions, and that is very dangerous if you do not have the capability to combat it. In the Northwest, we do have an AeroMet Zulu, which says that it begins at a base of 1,000 and the top is 19,190. We obviously do not have the ability to get above that as light piston aircraft. And with the freezing level at 1,000 feet above the ground, you cannot safely stay in the clouds below the freezing level and above terrain and obstacles. If you get into a cloud and there's icing conditions, you won't be able to descend safely without potentially causing a CFIT accident or a controlled flight into terrain. Hunt Field, Wyoming. It is -2 on the surface, but there's no clouds. There's no visible moisture. So you've only got one of the two ingredients necessary for icing conditions. Great Lakes area also has an icing AeroMet freezing level between the surface and 1,000 feet, and the tops are 12,000. So the freezing level is low enough in altitude that you're not going to be able to fly in the clouds, stay below the freezing level, and maintain appropriate separation from terrain and obstacles. It's going to be a similar story up here in the Northeast, another icing AeroMet. The base is the freezing level, which starts at 3,000, could also be 11,000, 1,000, tops at 220. Over Georgia and the Carolinas, we do have an AeroMet for icing, which begins at the freezing level of 10,000 or 13,000, tops 240. So there is potential in this area that you could stay below the clouds, stay above terrain, but still be below the freezing level. The question is, and we'll look at this, we'll take off the Zulu and the freezing levels, turn on the AeroMet Sierra. When you get to the point of there being an AeroMet for IFR conditions, that means it's a very large area, and you've got to start thinking, am I going to be departing the AeroMet to get to my destination, or am I going to be entering the AeroMet to get to my destination, or am I going to be in it the whole time? Here in the Lexington area, I'm on the edge of the AeroMet. So if we look at the METAR, we've got overcast at 1,100. The ceiling is forecast to get higher. So I look at that and I see that as an opportunity to safely build some instrument currency and proficiency. I'm on the edge of the AeroMet. I've got marginal conditions that are predicted to trend upward, and I have several VFR locations. Obviously, would be filed as an alternate, but could also be potential outs should conditions not move forward as forecast and instead deteriorate. Here in the Northwest, where again we had those Zulus and we've got that low pressure with the occluded front and the cold front coming in, we also have AeroMet Sierras as well. And because there are mountains there, we have the Sierra and the mountain obscuration. AeroMet Zulu, widespread area of IFR conditions and mountain obscuration. Again, the holes in the Swiss cheese are starting to line up and look not so good. We'll look at the AeroMet Tangos. The T is for turbulence. The green AeroMets here indicate high level turbulence, so 180 or above, which doesn't necessarily pertain to us as light piston pilots, but it does give us an indication of the overall stability and composition of the atmosphere. Yellow AeroMets are for low-level turbulence, which are present where those pressure and frontal storm systems exist as well. So again, the southeast and the northwest. The northwest here also has a low-level wind shear AeroMet. Airspeed loss or gain of 20 knots or more below 2,000 feet AGL. Another hole in the Swiss cheese. Low-level wind shear can be very, very dangerous. So that doesn't mean 20 knots is all it's going to be. It means a loss or gain of 20 knots or more. I've seen as much as 50 knots. Which in a Cessna 172 with a final approach speed of 65 knots, if you were to suddenly lose 50 knots, you are no longer flying. We'll look at the SIGMETS now. We looked at the severe weather watches and warnings earlier. The system that is producing thunderstorms, potentially producing tornadoes. We see convective SIGMETS there. This large one here, area of severe embedded thunderstorms moving from 240 at 45 knots. Tops are 440. Tornadoes, hail to 2.5 inches, wind gusts to 60 knots possible. That is miserable weather on the surface, and it would be much more miserable if you were in an airplane. If we turn on all the AirMets, we see some really beautiful colors pop up. But interestingly enough, the prettier an area looks, the more hazardous it could be. So those same areas that we've been talking about the whole time, the northwest and the southeast, are just covered in AirMets that each indicate a potential hazard to general aviation aircraft. The only area that we see no AirMets at all is this little sliver in the west from Southern California up to South Dakota and Minnesota. Really pretty there. If we look at Grand Junction, Colorado, they've got winds variable at 6 knots, 10 miles of visibility, and clear. That's really lovely. When we compare that to New Orleans, wind is 190 at 12 knots, gusting 19. Few clouds, broken, overcast, and predicted to get worse. And lower ceilings, cumulonimbus. That's what the CB means behind that. Eventually, within the next 24 hours, winds gusting to 2.7 as a result, again, of that low pressure and cold front coming in. So given the choice to fly in Grand Junction, Colorado versus New Orleans today, I would, of course, choose Colorado. Let's look at the low-level SIG prog chart for 24 hours from now and the surface prog chart for 24 hours from now. This is going to compare kind of like a forecast surface analysis with the forecast weather that's significant to us. That low pressure and cold front system that was over Texas is going to move up and north over Mississippi, bringing with it a chance of thunderstorms across the whole southeast, and with that, lots of precipitation, and where it's cold enough, the precipitation will be frozen, meaning snow. The northwest, that low pressure system is moving more inland, going to bring with it some snow, and that stationary front over Canada is moving farther down over the Great Lakes, going to come into Michigan and bring with it some precipitation. When we look at the significant weather chart, we see large associated areas of IFR weather. So ceilings 1,000 feet, visibility under 3 miles. Outside of those areas are also areas of marginal VFR, freezing level at the surface through a huge part of the US. If you're in a cloud anywhere within this purple squiggly, you will also be icing conditions. No go. We don't do that. The Four Corners area, Colorado, Nevada, all of you guys are going to have another beautiful day of flying, so get it in while you can before that cold front moves across and probably bringing in some nasty stuff your way. I won't be flying tomorrow. To reiterate, areas of IFR weather would be the southeast and the northwest and the far northeast. There are lots of hazards associated with flying IFR in that area. And while I can't make a go or no-go decision for you because you're PIC, you're responsible for the 91-103 requirements in terms of getting a weather briefing, determining runway length, takeoff and landing performance. There are many hazards associated within these areas that, for me, would preclude safe flight. There are some small pockets here and there where, with a more in-depth briefing, a tighter look at where you're leaving, where you're going, what's happening en route, there could be potential for a safe flight, also depending on what equipment you have on board. VFR weathers are kind of that corridor that we talked about in the middle of the country from Southern California up towards Minnesota and Michigan. And in those VFR areas, I don't see any hazards there. Sometimes we'll see an area that is VFR in terms of cloud clearance and visibility, but there may be low-level wind shear or turbulence. That's not going on today. All of the hazards that we see are associated with those low-pressure systems and frontal systems that are bringing in IFR conditions. So that's what we've got for Super Bowl Sunday. We've also got some conditions tomorrow that are going to kind of persist, both the VFR and the IFR areas. If you're interested in some AeroSafe swag, drop a comment below. Let me know why you watch this channel. Are you here to get an updated weather briefing? Are you here to enhance your understanding of weather? Or maybe you want to improve your own weather briefing? Drop a comment below, let me know why you watch this channel, and I'll reach out to you to send some free AeroSafe swag your way. On March 16th at 11 a.m., I'll be the guest speaker of the Wings Flight Club in Danville, Kentucky. I'm going to be talking about how you can achieve your dreams to become a pilot and overcome any obstacles that you may be facing. I'll be sharing my own story and then giving some practical tips and strategies and tactics that you can implement to actually become a pilot and fulfill that dream. Thanks for tuning in to AeroSafe, and we'll see you next time.